Welcome out to the Timber Frame today. My name is Nate Lang with Lang Custom Builders, and I hope you're excited because we got an awesome episode for you today. We have the frame up behind me. You can see it. We're gonna go through all the details with that timber frame, and I'm gonna show you how we made the connections and what went into putting it up. Let's go. All right, well, we're up here on the deck. Let's go through the details of this timber frame. We've got a Doug fir frame, and you can see all these posts are set up. So when you're talking about a timber frame, what they consider a frame is like the entire piece. So the whole thing is considered the frame, but each individual section is called a bent. And a bent is just a section of timbers that gets stood up at one time. So this timber frame behind me is structural. It'll be the structure of the house. The whole house won't be a timber frame structure. We'll have other pieces that go into it, conventionally framed walls. We have SIP panels. We also have moment frames, which are steel frames that will provide some structure to the house. But right behind me, everything that's standing up right now is the structure of the house, and that structure comes from the timber frame itself. So when I talk about bent lines, they're individual lines that get stood up and hooked together. So right above me is this first bent line, and this got put together with a series of wooden pegs and also some steel connectors up in the top. So each one of these bent lines gets put together a little bit differently. So if you come up here, let's take a look at some of the different connections that we use to make these bents. So the first connection that I'm going to talk about is the mortise and tenon with the wooden pegs. So these wooden pegs are actually structural pegs. So like I said, the frame is Doug fir, but the pegs are made of oak. And so these pegs get drilled, the hole gets drilled for these pegs, and then they get driven in. When the frame dries, the pieces tend to shrink a little bit, and that puts tension on these pegs, which makes it super strong. So the first connection that we have here is those pegs with that mortise and tenon. We also have different connections, and if you look up here, like the connection that we used to make for this plate line that went in here, so this is mortise and tenon as well, but what it is we have some structural screws that go down on top of that suck that into place. So on the bottom of all these posts, if you swing around on this side, you can see that we have connections made sucking this down to the subfloor. So in the past videos, we talked about the structural pieces of the frame that we put underneath the floor. So we put underneath there, we put the blocking in that transfers that load all the way down. That's why we had to put that blocking in, because these posts sit directly over that blocking. So these screws here suck these posts down into that. Also inside these posts, there's a threaded rod that goes up in there, and we put construction adhesive in there. And when those go together, that hardens and makes a good tight connection there. So back here, we actually have other connections that we made. So if we come out on this back porch area, this is going to be a doorway out to a back porch. So whenever we're connecting timbers to concrete, we make these connections here that are made with timber links. And so there's a threaded rod that comes up through this post, and there's a timber link piece that gets put in there, and it gets fastened down, and it actually spreads open, and it sucks this post right down onto this footing. So you can see we have a concrete footing here that goes down 4 feet deep, sits on a footer, and that's what provides the structure for that post. Back over here, we actually have some other connections that we make, and these are connections that we use to connect these plate lines. So that one's a little bit hard to see. Let's see, up in here. So if you see up here, right here in this hole, it's mortised out. So like I was talking about earlier, all these beams and posts and brackets and everything are made in a factory. So they make these, they use a CNC router to route out all the pockets and make all the connections. They lay them out on the factory floor and they pre-assemble every one. And in the factory, they actually will drill all these holes. So these holes come pre-drilled in the perfect location that these can be put in. So this frame actually went up in about 4 days, but they spent about 2 weeks prior to that in the factory putting it all together. So up here, you can see this connection. We have a steel rod in there, and that steel rod actually goes into that plate and then sucks those tight together. So it makes a real tight connection there that when the frame dries out and shrinks, it only puts more tension onto that connection. Well, the last connection I want to show you is what we use for our ridge beams. So it's really hard to see from here, but in each piece for the ridge, we actually have another threaded rod that goes through the ridge and makes that connection as well. So around this pool area, we have each one of these here that come down, and they have those concrete Timberlink anchors in there as well. So this whole frame, the details on this frame being Doug fir, so you can choose different options for the edges. So this is a round over edge. You can do like a chamfer edge that's got like a flat bevel on it. You can do a square edge. You can do kind of a live edge where they, make it kind of chipped away, so it doesn't look like it's been done in the factory, but more like a natural look, more of a rustic look. So you can choose that edge on there. Actually, clients can choose what these braces look like too. Sometimes they'll do a curve in them, or they'll make them a little bit smaller, but these are a little bit more beefy of a look and they're more squared off. They have that round over on them, and you can see that round over stops about 9 inches from the edge, and that just gives it that look. So what we'll do with these timbers, we'll go through and we'll sand every single one of these, and then we will stain each one of these. So this timber frame bent here, and all the rest of the timber frame will actually get like a dark brown stain. So the Doug fir tends to be a little bit pink in color, and so this client didn't want to see any of that pink, so we're gonna stain it brown so that you don't see that pink color come out in there. So we have that to do, all the staining and all the sanding across the whole timber frame here. You can see on this, we've started to build some walls around the outside. So this is a portion that's going to be conventionally framed. We have conventionally framed walls, stick-built walls around the outside. We'll insulate those like a regular wall. You can see over here, we actually started to put up some of the SIP panels. We'll have a full episode on all the SIP panels and how those go together. But over here, you can see that we've started building some of these SIP panels. These are structurally insulated panels. They got foam in the middle, and they all hook together to make a rigid structure around the outside shell, and they get bolted or lagged right to the frame. So those are the details there. Well, let's walk back into the main section of the house, and I'm just going to point out some of the details of the frame. So we're back in the main section of the house. This is going to be the entryway. So this is going to come in from the front door. So it's going to be completely open above me here. This is going to be the staircase. We got some temporary bracing here for fall protection, but the staircase will actually go here, and it will go up and turn up into the loft upstairs. So above me here is going to be the loft. So this section here, we have these timbers hooked in here, but what we're going to do is we're going to put the floor system on top of those. So you'll go up the staircase, and then you'll walk on that, and it will be a loft that goes all the way down into a couple bedrooms that will be the second floor behind me. When you're up in the loft, you'll come up and you'll stand on this section and you'll be able to look down into this great room. This great room will be open all the way to the ceiling. And if you can imagine, every single one of these holes here that I'm standing in will either be a window or a door. So we'll have window, door, window, and then we'll have windows up in the upper section as well. So this will have a lot of light coming in. You can see behind me that beautiful pond that we have out there. So you'll have, whole 180-degree view of that pond coming out of this great room. So if we come over this way, the great room then comes into the dining room, and this will be the dining room, and we'll have a patio out here. Behind me, as you can see, is the pool, and we actually have a deck built on top of that pool so that we can work on top of it. We can roll scaffolding on it. Like I talked, we'll have to sand and stain all those timbers. So we just wanted to protect that pool, make sure nothing happens to it, but also give us a great workplace that we can work on. Well, thanks for coming out today. I'm so glad you guys came and are checking out the details with us. We're gonna keep putting this stuff out, so I hope you guys are enjoying it and spending the time watching it so you can see all the details that go into building a house, and specifically a timber frame house on this one. So thanks for coming out.